Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world. Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Decoding AQ. With me this afternoon, or whatever time it is that you're listening to us, I have Rachel Treece, and she is coming to us from Luxembourg. And just as we were getting warmed up, she said, "That's cool. I'm Mrs. Agile." So welcome, Rachel.
Yeah, I am Mrs. Agile, and I'm delighted to be here. Don't know what's going to happen. It's a box of sweeties, so let's just see where the energy goes.
Love it. An open conversation. Well, Rachel Treece is the CEO of FTS Global and also of the Henka, I'm hopefully pronouncing that right, Henka Institute.
Henka.
She's a Henka.
Henka.
Henka. Henka. Thank you. Leadership and executive coach. She's a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and a financial services podcaster. So I shall be diving into that, having been married to Karen, who's been in financial services for 30 years. So I shall be listening acutely to that. You've previously worked and held a variety of executive jobs and roles within global financial services sector. And that experience of sort of managing multicultural teams for FTSE 100 and Fortune companies. But it's interesting that your legacy, you wish to be making financial services a better place and to help really the industry attract the talent it deserves within its ecosystem. Rachel was awarded the most inspiring woman in entrepreneurship in 2012 and is a founding member of the charity Dress for Success, based in Luxembourg. Regularly lectures at 3 different universities across London and Luxembourg on MBA and entrepreneurship programs, a thought leader, and I think we need to hold on tight because we'll be diving into something that she phrases corporate clairvoyance. And so we're going to unpack that concept and maybe truly level up our listening as we enter the world to really see clearly. So I'm going to start off with, what is Henka?
Okay, so Henka was born, if you like, on a holiday in 2019. It's the Japanese word for transformation, but it means something slightly different from the English word transformation. It's more the caterpillar turning into a butterfly. It's the fact that transformation is happening to us all at every day, in every moment, in every day, in every second. We are transforming. So the Japanese word Henka has that kind of inference in it. And it came to being because I was running the organization FTS Global, a global organization that delivered learning and development solutions for global companies worldwide. And I was actually on a beach in Thailand. And it's when you're really relaxed, the brain is really relaxed, that things perhaps come to you that they might not at other times. And it was during that time, and I thought, do you know what? The work we're doing is really good. We've got some great trainers, we've got some great products, but it felt to me as if we were putting sticking plasters on and bandages on problems, which helps for a while. Of course, if you put a bandage or a plaster on something, it helps for a while, but it wasn't really having what I would call the sustainable and long-term impact, which is often needed in organizations. So that's when Henka was born, which bases its philosophy on transformation and on using coaching skills in that transformation journey. So yeah, that's Henka.
And there's also the Chinese symbol that you talk about as well that makes up listening. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that and sort of the link between this concept of transformation that we're all going through and we're all in, and your concept and your thoughts around corporate clairvoyance, because I'm really interested in both the word of clairvoyance and what does that actually mean for companies? What's the value in it?
Yeah, well, clairvoyance comes from the Latin or the French. So living in Luxembourg, we're linguists, so we're using languages all the time. So clairvoyance means seeing clearly. So the Chinese, or if I want to be really precise, the Cantonese symbol for listening, and you know, I could show it on the screen, because it is, I did learn that this is a visual podcast, not an audio podcast.
Both. Yeah, it's both.
Yeah, I know, but I had to put on a shirt, so had to put on a shirt. So if you want, I can show you the symbol.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's show it and describe it for those listening as well, because it's fascinating.
Right. Share my screen then. Hang on a minute. Technology and all that. Okay, sharing screen now. So yeah, this is the symbol, the Cantonese symbol for listening. Make it a little bit bigger for you. There we go. So we've got the ears to hear, which is the bit that we think in the Western world, you know, it's about hearing. But then there's the mind to think. There's the eyes to see. So that's the bringing the bit about the clairvoyance. What is it that when you're listening to, when you're really listening to somebody, what is it that's not being said? And then there's the part about undivided attention and being really, really present, because all of us, we often listen to respond. And then there's the heart, the last part, which is the heart to really, really feel. And I was facilitating a global sales conference last week, where there were lots of people from Hong Kong. So they were joining in and adding their thoughts and feelings. So, you know, it's fascinating that that's what this symbol describes, listening. And as a coach, I started my real coaching journey when my daughter was in my stomach, so 17, 18 years ago. And yeah, one of the trickiest skills to really learn as a coach is listening.
And you're right. We often talk about this, active listening, you know, and listening, not necessarily, wait till you finish, because I've got something that I want to tell you, something that's really cool and that I've thought of, and not really paying attention. And that holistic view of paying attention, the focus of our mind, our heart, our ears, our eyes, all of those parts. And it's the balance then between the conscious and the unconscious of those messages as well, which is another layer of skill, isn't it? Because sometimes it's in what's not being said, or what's not being seen, or what's not being felt, where some messages lie. So tell me about your journey then of what led you into coaching 17, 18 years ago. Was it a particular event, Rachel, that happened for you, or were you getting coached? What was your on-ramp to that part of your life now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I was very quick biography, left the UK, joined investment banking, worked in marketing, investment banking, moved into human resources, and then I set up an executive search firm that was recruiting for the asset management industry from Luxembourg worldwide. Loved it, building a business up, entrepreneur, fantastic. And then I struggled to get pregnant, and I had 2 ectopic pregnancies, and I then went through IVF, and fortunately, you know, I fell pregnant with my daughter Evie, and it was at that time, whilst I was going through the pregnancy, that we received an offer for this business, which I'd worked so hard for and built up, it was a great offer. It was a fantastic offer, and I thought, you know, I'm 35 years old, I'm about to have my baby, really set up for life here. And my 2 business partners, they were about 20 years older than me, so they were in their mid-50s. And I remember one of them coming in to me and saying, "We've decided not to sell." And I was frustrated, I was upset. And so I hired a coach. And I had a couple of sessions with this coach. And on the second session, the coach said to me, which was more important, the deal or your daughter? You know, one might argue it's a loaded question, of course, but that question, whether it was loaded or not, had a huge impact on me. I let everything go. The deal didn't matter, wasn't important anymore. And what was really important was this wonderful thing that was about to happen to me, which it was. So that was my move into coaching.
It's interesting, isn't it, when we look back at things of what were pivotal moments in our lives, what led to certain decisions and what was the context. And of course, when we're in the moment of that, it's hard. When we then have space, time, perspective, all sorts of other things, it's easy to perhaps recant and in a few minutes just say, oh, this is how it was and this was what was going on. But of course, those moments of change are so complex, filled with emotion, filled with trauma, filled with all sorts of, I did this before, so I should get this, and all of these things that go on. And I wonder if at that point, then getting into coaching by seeing how it affected you, what have been some of the elements in your path in the last 18 years where you've had other moments of great insight, other than on the beach in Thailand to come up with your next plan? Have there been other parts that have either been an external pressure, something not going right, a partner, or an internal desire to do something different? Just give us a few stories of change.
So I think the other impactful story was related to my husband. So he'd been working for American banks for many years, long hours, etc. Really good at what he was doing, passionate about what he was doing. And then one morning he woke up and he said, I can't do this anymore. I cannot do this anymore. And it was burnout. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know that that's what it was, but it was burnout. And I read, I remember buying a book. I think it was probably before Kindles were, but so it was the real book. And it was a book called The Joy of Burnout. And there was one phrase in that book, The Joy of Burnout, which said, burnout is the soul's way of whispering to you that it's time for a change, which is just the most wonderful and powerful quote. So it was also at that point that I started to become really fascinated by the fact that, he'd worked long hours before and he hadn't had burnout. So what was it? What was it inside that corporation, that organization, which at that particular point had caused the burnout? So that's when I started to become really curious and fascinated about that. So again, they're all both feeders to what Henka is now, I guess.
Have that book. And it a lot of the perspective of things, do things happen to us or for us, is something inherently bad or good, and how can we shift and flip often perspectives, and we think about a job loss, a burnout, health issues, whatever it is, as being bad things. And actually some of the beauty is being able to flip them into service for a future version of ourselves that we're happier about, that we're more fulfilled, or that for a long time it's left, in the shadows, in the secret, bubbling away until there's a moment of reflection or a moment of breakage. And I imagine that coaching is interesting for different people in different ways. And I came into it through a company called Strategic Coach. My coach, Dan Sullivan, who focuses solely on entrepreneurs. And it was interesting because what was the trigger point to do something I'm either not satisfied for, or something I want to get, which I'm not able to try and achieve, and therefore go, how can I get some help? And you might see other people who've their lives have transitioned or changed as a result of working with someone else, in that context. What do you think has changed over the last 2 decades of how coaching is viewed, how coaching is accessible, and how you perhaps coach and use that modality with some of your work? Just walk me through a few of the evolutions that you've gone through and the industry has gone through.
Yeah, I have to admit, for myself, I'll be really honest with you, when I first started my coaching journey, even though I really, really, really wanted to be a coach because I'd had this wonderful experience, I started my journey and I thought, bit Californian, this. It's a little bit, I'm not sure that this is going to be able to work for senior executives, because it was the beginning of the journey. So I had my own perspective, I had my own view on what it was in the early days. Obviously that's changed now. I still think that there is a misinterpretation as to what coaching is. I think that some people still believe that coaching is about mentoring, in other words, telling, as opposed to asking. It's changed somewhat, but I still think that there is still that, particularly if we talk about sports coaching, there is a bit more telling in sports coaching than there might be in executive coaching. So the way I try to explain it to people is if you have a child and you're constantly holding their hands when they are trying to walk, that child is never, ever, ever going to walk. It is about asking. And I found a little quote before we went live, which the Tao Te Ching says, true mastery can be gained by letting things go their own way. It can't be gained by interfering. And we as human beings have a habit of wanting to save, of wanting to interfere, of wanting to control, of wanting to, all with good intention often, but that's what tends to happen. So the real power of coaching is to bring awareness, self-awareness to a human being, in order that they can make that shift and they can make that change themselves. So
I think it's a critical component to the world we're now living in. So where we're living in this accelerated pace of change with transformations in every part of our lives, not just in one segment, not just in family or in work or in wealth or in health, or all these different components, that they're all in this giant mixing pot of complexity that's going on, that needing help to navigate that is natural. And I'm curious to see this evolution that I've observed from it being limited by job role or level, to now trying to bring it in as a culture across an organization, to shift from, say, a management culture to a coaching culture. And suddenly someone's expected to do that. And of course, many people still trying to figure out a management from I was good at a skill, I did something, and now I've got people to manage and all that problem, to now I've got people to maybe coach and develop, and they're different skill sets along that. And your own career, from working inside big corporates to then an entrepreneurial journey with partners, to now founding multiple elements, multiple institutes, to lecturing, to writing books. What is it that do you feel have been the key components that shaped that career? Has it been in this continual relationship with a coach? Has it been a constant journey of reflection? What have been the things that have helped you in that sort of intricate path of your own career?
So I think my starting point was a move down south from the north of England, things happening. I wanted to work in advertising and marketing. That was my I graduated in mathematics and psychology, and I wanted to work in marketing, and I graduated in a recession, and so that didn't happen. But I really believe in synchronicity. I really believe in fate, that these things happen for a reason. And so I joined an investment bank on a graduate program. So it wasn't part of the plan, wasn't part, my university degree wasn't part of the plan. These were all very synchronous things. I wanted to go to university in Nottingham. That was far too close to home. But I ended up in London, which was a fabulous place to be, learning about different people. So yeah, two synchronous things there. What's really interesting, this is really fascinating. I went back home about 5 or 6 years ago, and I saw a photograph of me. And on the back of this photograph, it said, and I'd be about 15, it said, I want to work in a country that speaks French and German. And other than me writing that, I can't ever remember thinking about it more. And then somebody sent me to Luxembourg for 3 weeks, which ended up being 31 years. Well, we do speak French and German. It's probably one of only 2-3 countries that speak French and German in the planet. And I'm here. So yeah, I'm a big believer in fate and different paths taking you in different directions. So yeah, Luxembourg was a huge part of that journey. And Luxembourg, you know, by its nature, actually, because I'm big into inclusivity and diversity, and by diversity I mean also diversity of thought and diversity of thinking, which I'm passionate about. And Luxembourg has been an amazing and incredible place, because it is, you know, perhaps by its nature of being a small place, has had to embrace different thinking, different cultures, different nationalities, different ways of speaking, different ways of communicating. So that's also, you know, being in Luxembourg has also had a big impact on who I am and what I believe in, and that power of change.
It's interesting, these components of change that are either flow or friction. From was it my plan or was it not? I was just going with the flow, to this is no longer serving me. It's friction. I want to move gear. I want to shift around. And I guess that kind of dance between those things, if you take the country of Luxembourg, of looking at where are the points of friction, where are the points of flow, and how they evolve over societies, generations, and then give birth to very interesting organizations and company culture that allow that play between those things, of something coming in that feels a bit alien, bit friction to what we were before. Doesn't sound like, doesn't look like, doesn't feel like something we've seen before, but are we open to it, to allow it to maybe integrate and then become something new? And so that melting pot for you, I guess, of those 3 decades to be exposed to that has given you a different perspective, different muscles of being able to adapt to change, maybe in a more peaceful way in the chaos, perhaps, by just continually being exposed and having this sort of fostered acceptability of that. What do you think, you know, have you seen that's either unique or works really well inside organizations that are really driving that kind of mix between transformational change and inclusivity? What are they doing well? What's going on? And perhaps some of the stories of companies you've seen and been working with to highlight that would be really just fascinating, Rachel.
Yeah, so we've worked with a lot of organizations that are implementing leader as coach. So organizations that are really believing that actually in giving leaders coaching skills, that they can then use those skills. And it's not only just for being a leader, it's also for breaking down silos and creating that collaborative culture. So lots of organizations doing that kind of work. Lots of organizations, what tends to often happen is organizations might bring us in at a point in the transformation agenda when they're suddenly realizing, oh, crikey, this is actually impacting people. So they've thought about processes, they've thought about the finances, they've thought about the structure, but they haven't actually thought about bringing people along on the journey. So we'd typically be doing a lot of work using a methodology called Henka, group transformation, which is where we're working with groups to bring them along again on that journey, so they're not feeling, I guess, the command and control, because with command and control, you know, nobody's going to be brought along on the journey. You know, from a personal point of view, I mentioned just before we started, my dad had to go into a care home. It was something that had to happen. So this is probably friction, as you'd describe it. You know, did my mum want that? Did she want him to go into a care home? Absolutely not. So for her, it was this huge friction moment. So, lots of emotions running up. So human beings need to be brought along on a any form of change, and that's what we try to do with the Henka group transformation. So leaders, leader as coach, Henka group transformation, increasingly, which is really good, doing a lot more work with boards, because whether you're a board or whether you're a leader in an organization, imagine a board where actually there's diversity of thought as opposed to lots of accountants on the board. Imagine a board where the people on the board are able to suspend their egos and suspend their judgment and create a really safe space. Imagine a board where the questions in that safe space can be really challenging. Imagine a board where they can bring in metaphors to really help that. So again, we're trying to do work like that throughout the organization to help that change agenda.
I think one of the challenges is to understand the context of these things, because if we come back to a little while ago in the conversation of, well, is something inherently good or bad? And we might think, oh, friction, that's a bad thing, I want to get rid of it. But actually friction keeps my car on the road round the corners, but will actually make me less fuel efficient in terms of drag. And so where do I want friction? Where don't I want friction? And I saw a lot when I ran my agency. So I ran a brand and marketing agency for nearly 18 years. And a lot of this challenge around, oh, we want alignment, we want consistency, we want same voice. But yet on the same, sentence and space, we want diversity, we want to be challenged, we want difference. And so you're asking these two very distinct things of a team, of a person, of a board, of an organization, to say, we need to be aligned, but we also want diversity of thought and routes to doing that. And that takes energy. That takes, yes, some safety in that space, but it takes a lot of energy. And often, we talk about we want it, but actually when it comes in, no, we don't like it, because we get a bit sweaty, the heart increases, and we say, oh, no, that's not quite right. And we sort of bang it out of us of real challenge, of real diversity of thought, to just, okay, a little bit on my terms, but don't make me too uncomfortable. Is that good enough? Or do we need to feel uncomfortable to make diversity really valuable? What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I am, as I mentioned, really passionate about diversity of thought and diversity of thinking, because I've seen too often, and permission to use the term, there's a lot of box ticking sometimes. So you could imagine a board where, from a box ticking perspective, it's beautifully diverse, but everybody's been educated in accounting and law at Eton or a public.
It's diverse one layer deep, 1 mil deep.
Yeah, I'm talking about real diversity. What about somebody who's neurodivergent, who's thinking about things in completely different ways? What about somebody who's been educated in an entirely different way from somebody else? So I believe that it is all about energy. I love the fact you've used the word energy, and I'm going to have to pinch that. Friction and flow, love it. Friction and flow, it is all about that. But to access real change, there needs to be that safety, and we Europeans don't particularly like that word safety, so I'm gonna have to come up with something else, but you know what I mean. It's about having that safety to really feel that you can challenge and collaborate to make things move forward.
I've often had interesting conversations about this safety, psychological safety. When we're safe, then I'll be creative. And I've talked and I wrote about the Monkey King in terms of, well, even when facing death, can you have play? Can you have a smile? Can you be there? Rather than saying, when it's a nice environment, when it's safe, when everything's all right, now we'll get innovative, versus can we create a psychological moment, a cocoon of safety, irrelevant of whether it's really safe or not? Are our jobs on the line? Is the industry going through transformation? All of those things are happening. But yet still in that turmoil, I can invoke playfulness. I can invoke the moment on the beach where my brain's in neutral to allow creativity, because it's that balance that, yes, we need pressure in order to solve, but we also need space to solve. So how can we create that moment and that fluidity of that jazz between those things? I think is tough. I think it's really hard. And my own entrepreneurial journey, those moments of when you need the creativity most, it's when it's the most elusive, because you feel so much under pressure, too many things to do, not enough space, not enough, I can't really fail because everything's on the line. So how can I experiment and be okay with it when, if it doesn't go right, it could mean the end of something? And I feel that tension and pressure in a lot of individuals and teams and then organizations, that they're under this incredible pressure to, I've got to adopt AI, or I've got to do this, I've got to do that, otherwise I'm left behind, or I've got to learn this new skill. And so how do you create in maybe your programs or your sessions that ability to have the space for diversity when it's hard, when it's inconvenient, when the pressure's really high, and when the stakes are high? How can you create those? What are some of the experiences and maybe thoughts or techniques that you've used?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I typically work with groups that are very multicultural. So, I'll be speaking English typically if I'm doing the work, speaking English typically, but we might be going into French, or we might be using an English that's suitable for a group that are maybe not Anglophone. So language is one thing when you're creating that space. Energy is something else when you're creating that space, and humor. I have to say, humor has been around for centuries, and it's one of the great things. And I think you touched on that as you were articulating earlier. That's one of the great things that can create that safe space, using that humor and using that energy, and just getting permission from people. Just getting permission. Is everybody comfortable with this? Is everybody comfortable? So being inclusive and allow and checking in throughout the journey. It's not creating it and saying, right, that's it, because even that space has to change as you move through it. So that's what I find. But the cultural side is fascinating.
It is. And I guess, even down to language, because there'll be interpretation, there'll be understanding, there'll be tonality to a word that's said can mean 5 or 6 different things by the way in which we then say it. Oh, I'm fine. To, yeah, I'm fine, to all sorts of different ways. I'm comfortable, even. That is comfortable what we strive for? Is that what we should be wanting inside there? Oh, when we're comfortable, then we'll do it. Actually, no, we need to be able to be okay with not being comfortable, without burning out, without reaching for sharp objects, without perhaps getting to the point of complete collapse that wasn't on our terms. Because I love the idea of giving grace, giving thanks, and then allowing something to die. That service, that product, that way of doing something. No, I'm glad that we don't need to send telegrams anymore. Thank you for your service, but we're now moving on. Thank you, whatever it may be that has served us. And you mentioned the phrase, letting go to be able to grow. That approach in our model around unlearning. What has helped us get here won't necessarily take us there. And so I think that even just the whole thought of, creating comfort or those things, I find that hard to do when you're trying to break things or things are broken.
Yeah, you mentioned that word failure, and it's just brought something to mind. So I speak French, German, and Luxembourgish reasonably well. I won't profess to be a perfection, but I learned French at school in the United Kingdom, no more said, and I learned German at school a little bit in the United Kingdom, and then I came over to Luxembourg. But Luxembourgish, I decided to learn Luxembourgish 14 years ago when my daughter was about 3, because I thought, I don't want her to be naughty and I don't understand what's going on. So ich schon Letzterbücher gelehrt, so nebeneinander Spielschule, ich schon Letzterbücher gelernt und ich schon Gurking Angst, Letzterbücher schwätzen. So what I'm saying there is, I've only learnt Luxembourgish by having a go and really mucking up. Really, really mucking up the whole time. I've not learnt it formally in any way, shape or form like I have with French and German. And French, I'm still afraid of failing with French. I'm afraid of saying le instead of la. Luxembourgish, I don't care. I really don't care. And for me, that makes it an easier journey. It makes it an easier way to be, because I don't care if I fail.
It's interesting, isn't it? Where what we lay on ourselves of performance, of expected performance, can give us a sense of freedom, a freedom to learn out loud. The way in which you've learned one language versus another language, of the formality versus informality, to be, even your movement was different, about the freeing nature of, I'm sure you do care, but you feel free to be able to learn, first attempt in learning, fail. I love the acronym that I've seen flying around of that, to, actually, am I going to be given a red cross or be told I've done something wrong here? So I think maybe it's in the mechanic of the process of reward, the process of progress, that can allow more of that freedom, rather than it being correct or incorrect. Yeah. So maybe the experimentation, it's the reward, the behavior, not the outcome. It's, I've had a go, I've been free, I've done those things, and if I get good feedback, then I can improve that. And the feedback that comes not as a red cross, but a bit of advice, or, hey, try this next time, or what you said here, versus, hey, you're not good enough, you shall not pass, I think is a really interesting concept when we start to look at people's careers, and we look at team performance, and we look at the development of, this is what you've done, I have this role in finance, I'm an auditor, or I'm this person, to maybe, how could I learn out loud in a free space to take on new thoughts or new challenges or new ideas? And I think that's fascinating. And it comes back to maybe the child element of play. Yeah. So maybe we need to create the places where the stakes are lower to allow the play, to then go into the next arena once you've got those things, rather than say, hey, I want you to play here, but the stakes are really high, and we're paralyzed, rabbit in the headlights, to say, okay, go and play there. And it reminds me, of some of the just joy of playing, of the fictitious nature of putting, football teams together in fantasy football, putting what would teams be like in fantasy teams? Who would you have on there? How would they manage? What would they do? Rather than, oh no, we've got to do this output by this date, and these kind of things. Maybe there's an element of play and fantasy required in this imagination economy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Play, when we're encouraging people to embrace coaching skills, just start. You're not going to be perfect, and that's actually perfectly okay. I love what you're saying about play and that joy of playing and that joy of trying, because that's what it's all about, being fearless.
Maybe that's the moment between burnout and really busy, doing all the hours, is when it doesn't feel like play, it doesn't feel like fun, it doesn't feel like I'm with people in a way in which is fulfilling me. And I now go, actually, no, this is not acceptable anymore. And often it's the body that tells you that before the mind catches up, isn't it?
Yeah, the body's an incredible creature. One of the things that I looked at when I was studying the work and writing my book was around the body and the heart, and the fact that we've got these words, organization with the word organ in it. And we've got the word corporation, which comes from Latin, corpus. And we have the word, we talk about leading with heart. Well, the French word for heart is cœur. So we have courage, which comes from cœur, to lead with heart. And our bodies have, studies have shown that the bodies do have 3 brains, and this isn't permission to use this isn't BS. This is real stuff. We have a brain here. The heart has actually been proven that it is a brain, and the stomach has been proven. So all these things like courage and listening to your gut, and listen to you, they're things that we've been told for centuries, but they're actually real.
And it's about the transfer of data and information. The heart sends more information to the brain than the other way around, and so does the gut. Our gut intelligence and our microbiome. Naveen Jain started a company called Viome, which was all around your microbiome and having that analyzed from not only physical health, but then chronic diseases and mental health, of how we transfer information around our bodies. And then I started to learn some of the work by, I don't know if you've come across Amanda Blake.
Okay, I've not read that book.
Your body is your brain, and this is sort of somatic intelligence, and how our bodies, the density of neurons throughout our fascia, throughout the body, is an incredible other part of intelligence. And when we observe somebody or a situation, that it might tense us up and our shoulders are up, or long after a trauma of a bad phone call, or a boss being somebody that you didn't want to have that conversation in that way, that we might cognitively be able to process that and rationalize it and get out of the amygdala hijack. Hippocampus comes in and we start to do it, but the body is still in a mess. And it's still traumatized, and we hold that trauma physically in parts of our body, and those messages that are going in overload in different ways that either then overproduce cortisol and stress hormones and all of those things that impairs our cognitive ability. So we have, here's change, bang, suddenly all of a sudden the body has reacted in a certain way that in olden times would have served us, because we needed to fight up, flee, needed to do all of those things. Whereas now, where it's a cognitive challenge, not a physical challenge, but our body is reacting in a very physical way that impairs our ability to problem solve. So I think it's just a fascinating thing of how do we create that context? And maybe it's not comfort, maybe it's actually a functioning physiology we need to create. We need to create that coherence. We need to get our heart rate variability in sense through breathing, through those things. So it's actually a physical sense of comfort, not an emotional or cognitive state of, I'm now comfortable. Actually, is my body able to serve me now in this environment? And I think what I find fascinating in the world of work and this evolution that we're going through, and these transformations that we're going through, is just this awakening to the old and the new, to the deeply, millennia old, ways of breathing, ways of doing things that we've long forgotten the practices, to now we can plug our brains in with computer interface chips, and just this mashup between those things to figure out, how do we solve the opportunities and problems that we're facing as society, as a planet today, and how do we navigate it in a way that helps society all be better? I want to come back as we come to the piece, to your legacy of making financial services a better place and attracting talent that deserves to be in that ecosystem. And what is it, do you feel, that needs to be done to make it a better place? What is some of that work? What are some of the opportunities? Because it's gone through a lot of transformation in the last couple of decades, and it's, I'm sure, still only at the baby steps of what's to come. But what, in your view, are some of those things that are going to be the legacy moments for that ecosystem to thrive?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, like any industry, we've got AI and we've got technology, and all of those things are happening to financial services as they are with other industries. I think one of the challenges that financial services has in respect to the new generations is we had a guy come do some intern work, and I said, he got first class honours degree in economics, and I said, you really need to be thinking and considering financial services. And he said, no, they're corrupt, they're greedy. This is not an industry that I want to join. So, the Wolf of Wall Street, a lot of the challenges that have happened over the years have tainted its brand, if I'm really honest. And that's what's making it, less attractive. I've had people who'd say, they'd rather go and work for a gaming company, which is actually gambling, than they would for financial services. So, from a branding perspective, I think there's a huge amount of work to do. Probably like any other industry, the use of acronyms, the use of jargon needs to be resolved for that particular industry. But and I think, again, at its heart and at its soul, what it's about is helping people like my mum or me in the future to have a pension or some way of living in the future. So it's not for the uber wealthy. Most of what financial services is all about, and it's a critical ecosystem, is to help so many people, everyone on this planet, live a good life and live a sustainable life. So that's why I'm passionate about it. There's so much more to be done.
It's a challenge, isn't it? This financial literacy of how finances function in your life. We might educate mathematics, but not necessarily financial diligence and decision making around just basic financial management, wealth, bills. How do you educate? And that legacy of what we leave behind somebody might not be inheritance, but it's heritage. It's the values at which we educate them to deal with. And actually, I know we're getting close on time, and I have to share last night I watched Panorama on BBC One, had a documentary called The Downfall of the Crypto King. And it was fascinating. So it was all around the story of FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, that last year became just a really interesting story from something that was the fastest growing company in the world, in financial services, FTX, and yet in 10 days became the largest loss in human history of an individual, 40 billions worth of company wiped out. And I think his hearing is next month as it goes through for various, was it fraud or was it naivety and negligence? And I think there is a duty of financial services organizations, and you have all compliance, you have all of these things that are often the barrier to innovation, the barrier to change, but also the safeguard to things going horribly wrong. And I guess that is the two palm trees on the hammock. A hammock can't exist without two opposing palm trees, that you need compliance and you need innovation. And I think that beautiful challenge can create great opportunity, but also stories like, FTX. And anybody who's listening who's interested, it is an incredible story. You can get it on iPlayer, The Downfall of the Crypto King. I didn't intend to watch it, Rachel. It was just on when we were having dinner, and we were like, wow. And we couldn't stop watching it. It was just so interesting at the responsibility that it then boiled down to individual people. 1.4 million people that had put their bits of money in, their little bits, to try and better their future, to pay for the university for their child, to pay for the care for the, their elders, that then is at risk. And so I think that perpetual challenge of, as an institute, as an industry, to be responsible, but then also for us to be educated well enough to discern. And I think that's so hard, isn't it?
It's so hard. It's so hard. And that's the big challenge for the industry in the next 10 years, to be able to help that education process. That's what I'd say, because you're absolutely right. There are these two pillars, which both need to be there, not one heavier than the other. They both need to be there in beautiful balance. And that's the diversity of thought, isn't it? That these two parts can operate.
And to have fun with those opposing dynamics, you know, to have fun with the fact that, oh God, it's, oh, compliance have got to go through this, or, oh, compliance saying, oh, they, you know, do things without thinking the consequence, and all of those, to just say, no, this is the existence. This is the joy between it. You know, I loved the series Billions, you know, and just this sort of juxtaposition between the compliance guys who are, you know, always making it hard and difficult for them to make money, and the mavericks are always doing things dodgy and on the, you know, on the edge and on the fringe of what should or shouldn't be ethically or moral or even legally correct. And I think the opportunity, if we round it down, a question that I ask everybody at the end of the interview is around dealing with new things. And it's around how are we consistently learning, how are we both letting go whilst experiencing new. And it's a piece around curiosity. And Rachel, it's, when was the last time you did something for the first time, and what was it?
Can't say cooking a new dish. Can I say cooking a new dish that I've never cooked before? That's...
You've got the mic, Rachel. You can answer however you wish.
I swam in Lake Garda last week, and I've never done that before, but I've swum in lakes before. So, gosh, I'd love to come back to you on that. Something that's really, really, something that I've done for the first time. Oh, it'll come to me the second we put the mic down. Because I'm always doing new things and doing daft things and doing crazy things. But now the pressure's on. I can't think what it is.
It's interesting, isn't it, when our brain is given a question and we try to hunt for the answer, and we'll hunt in a variety of ways of, oh, do I take that literally? What did I do that was for the first time? And maybe a few days later, I'll come back with the answer, or I'll come back with a different thought or a different philosophical view. And what I'll leave you with is a thought. And actually, I'm rewatching Breaking Bad, the series Breaking Bad.
Okay.
We watched it 10 years ago when it first came out. And I said to my wife, oh, should we rewatch that? No. Anyway, we're rewatching it, and it's like we're watching a lot of it for the first time again, because you forget so much. And there's a little moment in there where Jesse and his girlfriend go to an art museum. And I think it's George O'Keeffe. I can't remember whether that was the artist, but let's go with it as if it's that one. And she had painted 26 doors, you know, doors 26 times. And he's having this conversation in the car about, you know, why does she keep just painting doors? You know, it's just a door. Surely, you know, you get it perfect. You just need to do one. And they were having this conversation of, why do we do anything more than once? Because it's different. You know, she says, oh, well, should we just make love once? Should we just do this once? Should we just do this once? And often doing something for the first time is actually because we do it with new eyes or new ears and new thought. So we can do what is apparently the same thing, but differently, because we're different. We're in a different mind, a different view, a different energy, a different thought. And so I like to think of it both in the logical sense of, didn't do this, did a bungee jump, didn't do that, you know, new things. But how can we create a new thought, or the naive eyes, the naive mind, the first time playful mind for something that we do every single day?
Yeah, so I'll leave you with the thought that I'm watching sex education for the second time with my daughter.
Brilliant. Well, the third season's just come out, hasn't it?
That's why we're watching it. That's why we're watching
doing the catch up.
We're doing the catch up to remind ourselves, so
to
that
remind yourself. And I bet in watching it, there's certain things that you know remember, But of course, we'll see it with the eyes of what we're experiencing in life at that moment. So we'll hear things differently.
And
we'll
what I am thinking is, gosh, did I watch this with my daughter when she was 13?
What a great series. What a great series.
Yeah.
All right. If people want to get in touch with you, Rach, what's the best way?
They can contact me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to contact me. Or if you go to our website, henkainstitute.com, there'll be an email address on there that they can contact me. So we'd love to hear from anyone. And it's been great meeting you, Ross.
Magic. Thank you. We'll get them into the show notes and we'll take the close on there. It's been a real pleasure. And I look forward to observing and watching your journey as you go through leaving a legacy in financial services of better than we found it.
Thank you so much, Ross.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQME assessment. AQai, transforming the way people, teams and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.